Halliburton double team, shot clock at 4. Nembhard's got to put it up. Step back, his three-pointer. Nembhard knocks the three down. Timeout, Knicks.
Anthony attacks. Hibbert denies him at the rim. Block number 5 for the Pacers center.
Wow, what a play.
Miller for 3, and he got it. Reggie Miller with a clutch tray, and it's 105-102. And a steal. Miller retreats to the three-point line and hits again.
Tie game.
Reggie Miller made a 3, stole the ball, raced behind the three-point line, and hit again.
Look, I know people are like, aren't you worried about going back to New York City and calling a game? No. I've owned this city. I've owned this building. So why would I be worried about walking on out there?
Harper to get it in. Throws it to Ewing. Ewing surrounded. 2 seconds to shoot. He drives. He shoots. He missed. He missed. He missed. We ring the bell, baby. Ding dong. The witch is dead. And the Pacers have won it 97-95. And we're going to Disney World.
Hello and welcome back to the Pacers Fever Show, your home for all things blue and gold. This is an Eastern Conference Finals series of heartbreaks and heroics, and today we gather to talk about a heartbreaker, a Game 3 loss where the Indiana Pacers were right there to win it at the end, but unfortunately gave up a 20-point lead and were in control on the verge of putting the New York Knicks on the ropes in Game 3 of the Eastern Conference Finals. But then it all came crashing down. Knicks stormed back, and what could have been a commanding series lead turned into a devastating collapse that might haunt this team in the games coming and maybe in years ahead as the Pacers lose a very crucial Game 3. And I felt like had the opportunity to do something that we have not seen as a Pacers fan base, and that was to put a team on the ropes down 3-0 and had a chance to sweep, go to the NBA Finals after advancing past the Eastern Conference Finals. So in today's episode, we're breaking it all down. What went wrong? Is there a silver lining anywhere? And the biggest question of all, did the Pacers just let their shot at the NBA Finals slip through their fingers? This is the Pacers Fever Show. Let's get into it. Number 3, Knicks versus the number 4 Pacers. Game 3 happened on Sunday, May 25th, and the Knicks get a game back after being down 2-0 against the Indiana Pacers. They beat the Pacers 106-100, and they force the Pacers to now have a must-win game, I believe, in Game 4. And maybe that's exaggerating a little bit, and maybe it's not necessarily true because of how good these teams have been on the road. But it does feel like obviously a 3-1 lead would be pretty big in this series and maybe insurmountable if you think about just what the Knicks would have to do then. But I also feel like going back into the Garden 2-2, and because the Pacers have played well there for so long, that they might be destined for a loss. And it's very difficult to win 3 games in a row. But I feel like if anyone can do it, it's this Knicks team because of how good Karl Anthony Towns has been. And Jalen Brunson is on his home floor. So we're going to get into Game 3 recap. We're going to talk about a couple of things that I felt like were instrumental in the Knicks getting that victory and forcing a very tough Game 4 at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. But let's talk about the rest of the series and what that'll play out as we advance along. And there will now definitely be a Game 5, which will take place on Thursday. But first, Game 4, Knicks at Pacers will be Tuesday. That's tomorrow, May 27th at 8 p.m. Eastern time on TNT. Game 5, Pacers at Knicks, will now be on Thursday, May 29th at 8 p.m. Eastern time on TNT. Game 6, if needed, will be Knicks at Pacers Saturday, May 31st, 8 p.m. Eastern time on TNT. And then if a Game 7 is needed, that would be on June 2nd. That is a Monday at 8 p.m. Eastern time on TNT. So one day in between each of these games that are left, just like in the last 3 games. I like that there is just one game break. I think that favors the Pacers, or had at least favored the Pacers. Maybe 2 games or 2 days in between would have favored Aaron Nesmith, as he did suffer an ankle injury in Game 3, which we will discuss at length as we roll on through the show. So Game 3 recap. Let's talk about it. Let's start with the pregame, talking about a lineup change that had been rumored after game 2, I guess. I mean, there was a lot of conversation on Knicks Twitter and the Knicks sphere, and even in a Thibodeau conversation after the game, he alluded to changes that could be coming to different rotations and lineups. And we did see that in game 3. Mitchell Robinson took the place of Josh Hart in their starting lineup. They went with a double big lineup, thinking that we can slow the Pacers down and that pace they like to play in. If we get Mitchell Robinson in there, who is great at disrupting pace because of his ability to grab offensive rebounds. And he's a very good defender, a good rim protector. And I think can defend at times against those switches that the Knicks are put into, much better than Karl Anthony Towns, obviously on the defensive end. But that was the big change coming into the game. Again, that was rumored to have happened. And right before the game, about 30 minutes before, we got confirmation that that was indeed the case, that Mitchell Robinson was going to step in. He's been really good in the series against the Pacers, causing problems on the offensive glass, and actually forced Rick Carlisle to make a change in his rotations as he has entered Tony Bradley in the spot of Thomas Bryant in their rotation off the bench. So Tony Bradley, one of the first people to come off the bench in this game because of Mitchell Robinson's presence. And Mitchell Robinson's presence wasn't felt too much in this game, I don't think. I mean, the first quarter, the Pacers didn't shoot the ball well, but I did feel like they were getting some good opportunities and some great open looks. But again, they just weren't capitalizing. We've seen that throughout these playoffs where the Pacers have these slow starts and are getting good shots. So, I mean, to be honest with you, when I'm watching games and the Pacers do have these slow starts, as long as they hang around these teams, I've felt pretty good about it, just because of their ability to find the level. Because, like I always say, water tends to find its level. And if the Pacers start out their first quarter shooting 30%, I feel like they go on these nice big runs in the second quarter or third quarters that really, or even fourth at these points, to really balance out that poor shooting from that first quarter. But yeah, I felt like the Pacers didn't really have a good performance shooting the basketball to start the game, but slowly started to pick it up and actually score 30 points in the first quarter and outscore the Knicks by 4 points in that first quarter. Is 30-26 at the end of the first. And a lot of that was due in the fact that I do think that playing the double bigs, while it's proven to be pretty effective against the Pacers at times, it does struggle in a lengthier period or longer sample size, just because, and we saw this with the Pacers and Cavs, and this is my point that I made on X before the game even tipped off, is that even if you insert Mitchell Robinson, even though it shows better as a plus minus on the board, I think they're like a plus 24 when they're in the lineup together against the Pacers in this series, or they were heading into this game. They had a very good plus minus when on the floor together. I felt really confident in the way that the Pacers were going to attack it, because I think you can take exactly what you did against the Cavs and do the exact same thing. I feel like there's a little bit of a tweak, just because I do believe Karl Anthony Towns is a far worse defender than Jared Allen and especially Evan Mobley. So I actually think the Cavs present more of a challenge with their two bigs in the way that they play their two big lineup. But I think it actually is an advantage if the Knicks continue to play these two together, because the way that the Pacers were able to break down the Cavs at times was because they were playing the two bigs, and they actually found it more effective when they went away from the two big lineup and played Evan Mobley by himself or Jared Allen by himself, but never together. I think that's what a lot of teams figure out, is that their starting lineups don't necessarily work against the Pacers, and there's always adjustments that need to be made. And speaking of, we're going to get into one of the biggest talking points I think that we have going into game 4 and leaving game 3. And it actually started in game 2. So let's rewind all the way to game 2. In the fourth quarter, Karl Anthony Towns only plays 4 minutes and checks in with like 2 minutes left in the fourth when the Pacers go on to win that game. But he had no impact on the fourth quarter. Towns checks in. They were just looking for offense, but Tibbs made the decision. The big cat, the guy they go out and trade a bunch of pieces for and reshape this team over the offseason. Cat sitting on the bench in game 2 of the Eastern Conference Finals as the clock runs out almost. So that was a big adjustment. The Knicks were actually, I think, better when Cat came off the floor and he wasn't playing with Jalen Brunson. And then in game 3, let's fast forward now to game 3. That decision was made to take Mitchell Robinson and place him into the starting lineup. But again, that was because of their good plus minus that they had and performances that they had when on the floor together in game 1 and game 2. You fast forward to game 3, and at the end of this game, Jalen Brunson is not playing in crunch time until later on in the fourth quarter. Mostly because of foul trouble, I think, but and a lot of this is due to the fact that the Knicks were in foul trouble all night is because they had to play these makeshift lineups that they don't typically play and actually found success in playing these lineups. Let's just hope Tibbs forgets that there were successes in some of these lineups and he forgets and he only plays 7 players next game like he usually does. But the reason why I'm bringing up this Cat and Brunson argument is that when they have played together in these playoffs, which has been 352 minutes in these playoffs, their offensive rating is 2.1, and this is low leverage removed. So these are the minutes that really count that are high leverage moments. They've played 352 of these minutes together. Offensively, they're just a plus 2.1. Defensively, they're a -7, and that net rating is a -4.5 in those 352 minutes played together and removing the low leverage situations. So games that are close or tied, and even in crunch time, high leverage situations, they're a -4.5. When Brunson is on the in the lineup and Towns is on the bench during these minutes, it's been 144, and the Knicks have a plus 10.6 offensive rating compared to what they have when the two are on the floor together. They have a defensive rating that is positive of 4.4 and a net rating of 15.1. So positive when Brunson is out there and Towns is on the bench. And then in 91 minutes that Cat has played and Brunson has not, the offensive rating is -6 from their pace or their normal rating in the minutes that Towns is out there by himself and without Brunson. And then the defensive rating is actually a plus 23.7. So it is a 17.7 net rating. It just shows you that the Knicks are much better when one of these guys are not on the floor. Which is crazy to say because these are the 1A, 1B kind of guys, or you could even say, I guess, Brunson 1, Karl Anthony Towns 2, but I would argue 1A, 1B as far as the options in the offense. And the fact that when they play together, they're so bad defensively that they just, I don't think they can, I don't think you can look at this as a head coach now in the Eastern Conference Finals and say that those two can really play together in crunch time. I think you have to have that conversation of like, how do we do this? Like, do we bite the bullet and play them both in crunch time in the fourth quarter, which I think that's what Tibbs will do. But you got to know they're not as good. That Knicks team is not as good when those two are on the floor together. And the problem is that you want both of them out there in the fourth quarter because of their ability to score. But their inability to defend is what causes the problems. They are not good defensively when they're out there together because, like I've said multiple times, and I think when you're building a team, you've got to look at this. You cannot have your 2-star players be also your 2 worst defenders on the floor when they're out there. It causes this conundrum, right? It's put the Knicks in this very difficult position where, and I think it was a benefit to Thibodeau that Brunson got into foul trouble because at the end of the day, right, these guys are human and they want to be out there in crunch time. Both of them want to be out there in crunch time. And Tibbs was forced to throw Karl Anthony Towns back out there in game 2 because they needed points quickly. They were down by 10, and they just thought, let's just throw him back out there because forget what he does defensively. We need points. And then in game 3, Brunson gets foul number 5 and has to sit the fourth quarter until the last, I think, 4 minutes is when he came in. So he's sitting this whole time. And it's because Thibodeau can be like, well, you were in foul trouble. We didn't want you to get your 6th foul because should this game have gone into overtime, we needed you. So Thibodeau's able to use those as, I would say, excuses as to why they were able to do the things that they did, like keep Towns on the bench because they were playing well defensively and keeping themselves in the games. But once the game got out of hand, they needed his offense. So they threw him out there and they were like, well, we were just trying to keep you fresh for the offensive end, which is weird because he only played the last couple of minutes of that game. Towns did. And he played the first 2 minutes of the quarter. But then you have this thing with Brunson where you could see Jalen standing at the edge of the bench, and they have this perfect shot of him. And this was what most players probably would do, star players, especially superstar players like Brunson. He was looking down the bench at Thibodeau, and he's kind of like side-eyeing, like, coach, like, I'm here. And he keeps looking at the floor, and then he'd look back at coach, look at the floor, and look at coach. Like, hey, don't forget about me. I'm over here. You know, the most clutch player in the league. I won the award. I'm down here. Like, did you forget? It was funny because it was just like, whoa. Thibodeau had to make the choice, right? Thibodeau was making the choice to stay with the lineup that was working, and that lineup did not include Jalen Brunson because the Knicks were just frustrating the heck out of the Pacers, and they didn't need Brunson's offense because of Cat. So he was happy keeping Brunson over there because if Brunson comes out there, if they would have played Jalen Brunson in like the 6-minute mark with the 5 fouls, I actually think the Pacers had a good chance to win that game because Brunson would have wanted the ball. He would have taken I think he would have taken the ball out of Cat's hands some. And Cat doesn't have that 20-point fourth quarter. I think maybe it's more realistic of a 12 to 14-point quarter, and you live with that some if you're a Pacers player or fan. But it's an interesting storyline going forward, the lineups, because these lineups are clearly better when the two of them are not out there together. And that's not good because you get 2 stars. You have 2 superstars that you have to play together because that's what you've built this whole team around. And the fact that they cannot play those 2 together and have them be effective, that's a problem. Like, that is a roster construction problem. If they beat the Pacers in this round, I don't believe that they're constructed to beat Minnesota, or I think it'll be OKC. They will not beat OKC. They're just not constructed well enough to beat OKC, as many teams aren't. But they'll just exploit those 2 because of how good they are offensively, and they'll crush Brunson defensively. So I feel like the Knicks are in an interesting spot, right? Because they've made it all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals. They've got a good chance still to win this Eastern Conference Finals. I still think there's a possibility that they could. But going forward into the future, I don't see this Knicks team necessarily hanging on to Karl Anthony Towns because I just don't think the 2 of them work together. I think that they'll trade him for somebody else because you just realize that in the postseason, the lineups that have featured those 2 just don't work. And you don't want to relegate Karl Anthony Towns to a bench role or Brunson to a bench role. So you'd be crazy to do so. Absolutely insane. So it's interesting. And can they get better? Maybe, but they're just such liabilities defensively, the both of them, that, and they've been around forever. It's not like they're just going to flip the script and all of a sudden become good defenders, or at least serviceable. They're just not good defenders. The size of Brunson is a problem. He's not as quick side to side. Towns just, I don't know, the intensity usually isn't there to defend well, and in today's NBA you usually have a quick 5 that can get around him, or you have a bigger 5 that can take him down to the post because he's not like a great post defender. So there's a lot of issues, I think, with the Knicks lineups that could be an advantage for the Pacers, and should the Pacers need to go after them again, I think that they will fare a lot better. Just because I feel like in game 4, I just don't see a world where Tibbs is making the switch. And if they did, it would be at the expense of Towns. Like, they're not going to sit Jalen Brunson in crunch time, I don't believe, over the option of sitting Towns. Like, I think you go with Brunson 100% of the time because of his ability to close out games and score. And you kind of live with his defense because you can sort of hide one of them if he's out there by himself. Whereas, and it's going to affect Towns going forward. He had a great night in the fourth quarter. But outside of that, besides game 1, he's been a non-factor. In game 2, he was not a factor. In game 3, quarters 1 through 3, he was not a factor. It's not until that fourth quarter where he has 20 points. He had 4 points going into the fourth. So the Pacers had eliminated him And Brunson is not as good as he is at home. He's just not as good on the road. So it's an interesting storyline. It's an interesting dynamic. I feel really confident in that, where the Pacers are, if Thibodeau sticks to his guns, he's liable to play Towns and Brunson in the fourth quarter again at some point in the series. And I feel like that's where the Pacers could win a deciding game. And could that be game 4? I could see it. I could totally see Tibbs reverting back to a Towns, Brunson, Hart, Anunoby, and Bridges lineup in game 4 to close out the game. And I could see where, once again, the Pacers could attack that and take advantage of it, because they're going to get better. They're going to make those adjustments coming out of game 3. And the Pacers were the better team for 2.5, almost 3 quarters of this game. And the Knicks made an incredible run in the fourth and came back to win the game. But definitely watch that in the game coming up on Tuesday. That's going to be a big storyline going into the fourth quarter, because I think that these games are always just going to be, right down to the wire. It's what it's feeling like, that these teams are enough problems for each other offensively, and you don't really get stops defensively. I mean, this game was a pretty low scoring game because it got real sloppy and messy. I think in the third and fourth, to allow the Knicks back into it, because again, like I said, in that first half, the Pacers were running away with it. They were up 20 points at one point before the second half ends, and then the Knicks go on a run and get back into this game eventually, because they've just muddied up the water and caused the Pacers problems on the offensive end. But the Pacers were rolling through the first half, and the Knicks rolled through the fourth quarter. So it was an even game as far as one half was the Pacers, one half was the Knicks, but the Knicks had more firepower at the end of the game, and the Pacers just couldn't throw any punches back at them. Whereas, I felt like the Knicks threw a pretty decent punch at the end of the second quarter to keep them in the game. Pacers never really answered and responded to what the Knicks were doing in the fourth. So that's just kind of a quick recap of what happened as far as the lineups were concerned, and not quick because that took 20 minutes almost, but it's the biggest storyline moving forward. What do the Knicks do? And I think this is important to think about as we get further into the show. So if you're following along on YouTube, you can actually see my rundown for each of the episodes. It has all the bullet points listed out to all the things that we'll be discussing in the episode, but I try to do a good job of reading those out for those that are just listening to the audio version of the podcast. But again, we're on YouTube at the Pacers Fever Show. If you want to subscribe there, comment, it helps people find us. Share it with your friends if you're Pacers fans or just basketball fans in general. We really appreciate the support so far. You can also find us audio version over at Apple and Spotify, or anywhere where you find your podcast. But yeah, this was a cat game. Karl Anthony Towns, this is why you get him in the offseason, right? His ability to score. I mean, you hear the discussion all the time, and I think Kevin Durant's close to 7 foot, if not 7 foot, but Cat's a legit 7 foot center, and one of the best ever at his position to be able to score and do what he does. I mean, he's so nimble, and his ability to take the ball onto the dribble and get to the lane and really just causes problems for defenses, because the bigger centers aren't able to keep up with him. The smaller guys have a hard time with him because he likes to go down and drive you down into the paint and make you pay for your size differential. So Cat, again, wasn't effective in game 2 or the beginning of game 3, really, and all the way through the third quarter. It's not until the fourth that he has that big smashing quarter against the Pacers defense. But if you look back at his history, he's just been a Pacer killer. The last 10 games, he's averaging 28 points per game, and this includes last night. 28 points per game, 11.2 rebounds per game, and 2.5 assists against the Indiana Pacers. He's so good at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. He likes shooting there. I just feel like the last couple of games that we have played him at Gainbridge, he's torched the Pacers. I think he had 35 in the last regular season game against him, or early on in the season he did. But he has this knack. He destroys Miles Turner. Pascal Siakam can't really guard him. Well, I say that. They haven't really tried that matchup. And we'll talk about that because I think there's something in that we can discuss later on. But game 3, I mean, it looked like it was going to be a disappointment for the Knicks. They scored only 45 points in the first half, trailed by as many as 20 points in that first half. Brunson and Towns played most of the fourth quarter with 5 fouls. That being said, Brunson really didn't. That was from a different article that I pulled, but Brunson really didn't play that too much in the fourth, actually. But Towns did play with 5 fouls in that fourth quarter as well. And actually, Turner had a good chance to take him out of the game pretty much because of that. He ended up with 5, but I think there was a moment too where Miles Turner could have given him another foul, and that would have been his 6th eventually. So, yeah, both of them in foul trouble, and that's been the case for a lot of this game, or a lot of these games where Brunson and Towns have had a hard time staying on the floor because of foul trouble, because they're just not good defenders, and the way that the Pacers attack, they just get put into too many actions and have a hard time defending this Pacers team. Head coach Tom Thibodeau was scrambling to find lineup combinations that would work. Landry Shamet and DeLon Wright combined to play 24 points after playing a total of 26 seconds in the first 2 games. It was because of the foul trouble that Thibodeau, and because of the deficit, that Thibodeau just got desperate and had to pull guys like Mitchell, like Karl Anthony Towns, who was in foul trouble, Brunson's foul trouble. Like, he had to pull different guys. Anunoby got tired, Bridges too, and he had to find legs because with Brunson and Cat in foul trouble and McBride at times being close to foul trouble, Thibodeau got desperate and he threw out, and as you would in a game 3, where if you lose game 3, the team's never come back from a 3-0 deficit to win a series. So it became desperation time in the third quarter when all of these guys are tired and there's rotations needed. And Thibodeau just said, you know what? I'm going to go and throw Wright and Shamet into the rotation, and with McBride and Hart, and then throw one of the bigs out there like Mitch or Karl Anthony Towns and see what works. And boy, did it pay off. I think Miles McBride has always been a problem, or Deuce McBride's always been a problem for the Pacers. Like, he's always scored pretty well against Indiana. He's got a great jump shot, and he's one of those guys you have to worry about. He'll hit 2 or 3 big 3-pointers. He hits jump shots. He can get to the lane. He's pretty good defensively as well. I really do like Deuce McBride as a bench option. I wish the Pacers had somebody kind of like him too, pair along with TJ. But he's a really good option. I mean, he plays the point. He can get to the basket. Again, he's just an overall solid player off the bench. I've always thought that. And he's played well against the Pacers in the past. And in last postseason, he was a good threat. But really, I mean, that's who they relied on off the bench, and Mitch. Like, those are the guys that they usually rely on. But then you put Mitch in the starting rotation, and when the rotations came around, it was time for Josh Hart to go into the game because he was on the bench now. And Josh Hart had a really good game off the bench. He's a much better player, I think, with that second unit, just because he's not playing some of the players that he would in the first unit that are guarding him, like a Nembhard or a Nesmith at times, or even Tyrese. You know, he's going up against guys like TJ McConnell or Benedict Mathurin, Ben Shepherd, and he's a better player than those guys. So he causes problems on the bench, just like Mitch caused problems with the unit because the Pacers didn't really have anybody in that second unit to deal with him until they dug up Tony Bradley. So you got to find somebody, if Josh Hart is going to come off the bench, you got to find somebody to take him and Deuce McBride, because those guys are going to change the game with their intensity. Those two are problems. I would say that those two can change games, and the way Mitch plays, he can change a game. I mean, drastically. So the Pacers just ran into an absolute storm because you're not really prepared to play this lineup with Shamet and Wright. And Shamet had a few moments that were good. Wright was just solid. Like, Wright didn't really do anything, but he was solid. Like, he didn't give up points. He didn't, foul a ton. He's not a liability defensively. He's actually a pretty good defender. So you bring in these guys that don't typically play, and then things go right for both of them. And so then they start to get hot, and Shamet hits a shot, and the guys just get confidence. And the more you let those two get confident, the more impactful they're going to be. And when a team starts to roll, that's when you see defensive intensity step up, and that's what happened. And the Pacers weren't ready for it, especially that bench unit is not ready for that type of intensity, like that bench unit plus Pascal, like with Obi Toppin, TJ Shepard, and Mathurin, which I think they played too long, in my opinion, for a game that you could feel the momentum just slipping away, minute by minute, second by second. You could just feel it was getting scary for the Pacers. And it was all because of those lineups, those bench lineups with Mitch, and then a combination of Mitch and Anunoby and Bridges, take out Brunson. But they basically combined those bench players with every single rotation you could possibly think of. Because here's a look at them for 2 minutes: Anunoby, Hart, Bridges, Mitchell Robinson, and Shamet played together. That was 2 minutes in the game last night. They scored 5 points, and they hit a 3. They were a +5. DeLon Wright, Josh Hart, Mitchell Robinson, Shamet, and McBride. That was a rotation that played together for a minute. They scored 5 points. They were a +5. Wright, Towns, Hart, Shamet, and McBride played for 3 minutes. They scored 9 points. They were 4 of 7. They were a +3. They were rebounding well, too. They had 2 rebounds and 3 assists. That was a good offensive lineup they had there. Like, that was a really solid offensive lineup. Anunoby, Hart, Bridges, Mitchell Robinson, McBride, a +2. They scored 4 points in a minute. Josh Hart, Brunson, Robinson, Shamet, McBride, they played a minute, scored 2 points, was a +2. So all these guys that don't typically play, those were all the lineups with all those random subs. And they were all plus. It's frustrating because you don't prepare for that. You don't think that that's coming because Thibodeau has always refused to do that. And I would not be shocked if they go back to a 7-man rotation in game 4. I just wouldn't, because Thibodeau has a hard time trusting guys. And while they were serviceable, I could see it going not so well in game 4 for like a minute or two. And Thibodeau going, nope, see, told you this doesn't work. I could see that happening because it's very hard to get in the circle of trust. I think Austin Rivers actually tweeted about it because he played for Thibodeau at one point and said that it is so hard to break into his circle of trust. And the minute it does not go well is the minute that you are excluded for games on end. So I think that the Pacers will be more aware of how to attack those type of units, and it won't go well for them, and they'll quickly change that, because the Pacers are going to come out with the most intensity I think you've seen all playoffs in game 4, because they know the importance. They know that if they get game 4, it is going to be very difficult because the Knicks will then have to win 3 straight. And it is hard to beat an Indiana team 3 straight times. So that's what's riding on game 4, and the Pacers know that, and they know that these lineups are going to be thrown at them probably at some point in game 4. How do they respond to them? Because if they respond well to those, Thibodeau will shut that down. So chess, not checkers. Rick Carlisle is a much better coach than Tom Thibodeau, I believe. And I think game 4 might display what's going on. So behind the scenes, at least. Things finally swung into New York's favor in the fourth quarter, particularly with Towns. The Knicks center had 20 of his 24 points and grabbed 8 rebounds in that final period. Jalen Brunson actually played his worst game of the series with 23 points on 6 of 18 shooting and 1 assist. But he made all 10 of his free throws to help the New York Knicks claw their way back into the game and finish the game, because he hit some really clutch free throws at the end. The Knicks outscored Indiana 36-20 in the fourth quarter to steal a win and get back into the series. It was also a nice reversal for them after their historic collapse in game 1, where the Pacers basically did the same thing that the Knicks did in game 3 at the end of the game. Looking at adjustments made in this game, the Knicks didn't really have answers. I'm not going to lie. The only answer that they had was this random lineup that showed up because they got into foul trouble. Because if Jalen Brunson does not get into foul trouble and Karl Anthony Towns does not get into foul trouble, you don't see Landry Shamet, you don't see Wright, you don't see this bench unit, I don't think, at the level that you saw them, and they don't cause a problem for the Pacers because the Pacers just had no answer for it. That's really it. I mean, that's what the Knicks answer was desperation. They didn't do anything else that I thought was any different. I mean, they did a better job defensively on Pascal. I think that's what you could take away from it because everything else, I don't really feel like they had some moments against Tyrese that were better, but Tyrese was still getting to the spots that he wanted to get to. And to be honest with you, Tyrese admitted that he got to the spots he wanted to get to and just didn't do the things that he was supposed to do to generate the offense. But he said that, I got to those spots. I didn't have a hard time getting those spots. I just didn't finish them. So that's big if you're a Pacers fan. I think looking forward is that the Knicks only thing they tried to do to answer and adjust was throw Mitchell Robinson in. It worked out well for Josh Hart, which I figured it would because Josh Hart's playing against a weaker unit. Like that comes with the territory of removing him from the starting lineup. But I also felt like it weakened the starting lineup because I think that the Pacers would actually benefit if they continue this two big lineup. Because Mitchell Robinson, I think Miles Turner did a really nice job keeping him off the glass, and he really wasn't effective on the offensive end at all because he's not an offensive player. He's just defensive minded, and I don't think he did enough defensively to stop anybody. So I think it's a problem for the Knicks more so than it is the Pacers having that too big lineup. But then you throw Josh Hart in there and you have other problems because, again, you're not going to take Cat out of the starting lineup. You're not going to take Brunson out of the starting lineup. So no matter who you throw out there, there's still going to be huge gaping holes in your defense, no matter who you put in. Because Josh Hart's a good defender and a good offensive rebounder too, just in a different way than Mitchell Robinson and what he provides. So you're not really doing anything doing that. And they played roughly the same kind of minutes that they would normally play anyway. It's just who started. It's not that much of a difference. And then Deuce McBride, you know what you expect with him. He's going to get hot sometimes, and sometimes he's not. And sometimes he'll be a factor, and sometimes he won't. But I just felt like cohesively together as a unit, that second unit was flying around. Like Shamet and Wright played with reckless abandon, and so did Hart and McBride together with those guys. And they were just fast guys. That's a smaller lineup, but they were flying all over the floor, causing problems for the bench unit for the Pacers, plus Pascal. So if that's what I'm looking at as a Pacers fan, even if I'm a Knicks fan, I'm looking at, okay, what did the Knicks do to adjust in this game? Nothing. They played better defensively, but that was because of that desperate unit that came in off the bench. That was it. Like, it wasn't like they were doing, I mean, the first quarter, the Pacers had their way with them defensively. It wasn't until, again, that bench unit shows up and they caused a problem for the Pacers. So that's why, I was feeling really down after the game last night because I felt like that was the chance. If the Pacers win that game, they're going to the NBA Finals. That's just it. Like, they were going. Now, it's going to be a long series. That you let this team back into it, they've got a good chance to tie it up 2-2, right? Especially depending on Aaron Nesmith's ankle. Like, if they have to go without Aaron Nesmith in this series, I could see the Pacers losing this series. So you wonder, there's so many moving parts now where if the Pacers close the game out, Nesmith still gets hurt, but you still close it out. I'm pretty sure you get the sweep. And if not the sweep, you close it out in 5. You would have given Aaron Nesmith about a week between now and the finals to rest that ankle. But now you're hoping that that thing doesn't swell up, that he is able to play and contribute in the way that he has been. I thought there were some moments where he looked tentative on it, but honestly, like, I thought he looked okay. Like, he moved around. I was interested to see how he moved, but he was just as quick as he normally was, I thought. And then he went up against Anunoby, got blocked, but I really did feel like he looked normal in those moments. Now, that being said, it was a crazy ankle turn. Like, it was a severe ankle turn that he had. I don't know how that looks. They said he was walking around gingerly, like very gingerly after the game. there's probably a lot of it mentally that he's thinking, well, I did this early on in the season. I missed 30 some games. So I guarantee you there's a little bit of mental aspect to it. There's also just the fact that not every ankle sprain is the same. So he's probably dealing with different kind of pain. And for a guy that is pretty explosive, pretty athletic, he relies heavily on that ankle to be 100%. And it won't be for the rest of this series if he plays. So, and as these games go on, they're going to get more and more intense. So I'm worried. I'm worried a lot about Aaron Nesmith because he's been our second best player since the All-Star break. And when you miss your second best player in the playoffs, that's tough, right? That's real tough. But we'll see. Today, I think they'll probably do some film today and maybe a walkthrough, maybe. Probably not, but I'm assuming that Aaron Nesmith is at the facility getting all sorts of work done on that. I'm sure he's got a icing routine and a heat routine, and they're probably massaging that thing out and trying to get it as normal as possible. I'm sure there's a lot of work being done and behind the scenes to try to get Aaron Nesmith back for game 4 because that is essential. Just because, honestly, if Benedict Matherin's playing the way he was in the season, I'd be like, well, the Aaron Nesmith thing really sucks, but I guess we go on, we can still do things. But the way that Matherin's played, that loss to Aaron Nesmith would be catastrophic. Big moments that changed this game. Let's start at the beginning. A slow start at home once again. I just felt like the Pacers weren't really coming out with the energy that you'd expect. They were letting the Knicks kind of hang around, and then because of TJ McConnell coming in the end of that first quarter, you started to see a spark that he often provides, especially at home. He's been so great at home in these playoffs, but I felt like once Toppin and McConnell come in that into that first quarter, they really sparked that team. And Ben Shepherd too hit a big 3. Tony Bradley had a 2. The bench unit was playing really well, firing on all cylinders. They played extremely well all game. I just feel like, again, the Pacers, that's their advantage, is when the bench played well. And I felt like quarters 1 through 3.5 played very well. Then all of a sudden it imploded on the bench after, unfortunately, it played so well. And then it was like, oh no, because we've seen that, right? We've seen moments where the bench unit struggles, but they were crucial in that first quarter because they kept the Pacers right in it. They kept them afloat. They gave them the advantage. I think you felt good because TJ was doing what he was doing. Obi Toppin was having a really good quarter. I just felt like you're like, all right, like this is Toppin had 7, Toppin had 2. He was a +7. McConnell had 6 points. He was a +3. Ben Shepherd had a 3 and was a +3. So you got some great production off your bench early on from those 3, plus Tony Bradley, who came in and did pretty well, right? Had a big block in that first quarter. Just felt right. Felt good. Felt like that Pacers bench that we had last year. I'm like, all right, this is the infusion of energy we needed. And then in the second quarter, they continued. Like that bench unit continued to do great things for the Pacers. Obi Toppin, a +12. He had 4 points. Ben Shepherd, a +12. He had 0 points. Tony Bradley, a +6, 0 points. McConnell, a +3 with 4 points. And Mathurin, 2 points with a +3. I felt very solid in that quarter. You get a really good quarter from the bench. And then Tyrese Halliburton had 5. Nesmith had 5. Turner had 4. So a well-rounded second quarter. The scoring was coming from all over the place. It started to get out of hand, obviously, in the second quarter. We were texting back and forth like, this is over. Bye-bye, Knicks. Yeah, that was a bummer, tweeting or texting that to people. It was not over. A lot of people in the world, the national media, watching this game go, oh, it's over. The Knicks are done. The Knicks were indeed not done. Good job us for jinxing it. I don't really believe too much in jinx just because the players can't hear me, right? And then they're like, well, the basketball gods will punish you. Yeah, whatever. I don't think so. Yeah, a great first half. Pacers got what they needed. Foul trouble was coming. Brunson was in foul trouble in the first half. Towns in foul trouble. OG Anunoby, McBride, they were on the cusp, right? A lot of different issues for the Knicks. The bench pretty non-existent once again in that first half. I mean, just look at that first half, right? The bench unit for the Knicks. Josh Hart, 4 points. Landry Shamet, 3. They had 7 bench points. The Knicks did. Compared to the Pacers, who had, hold on, let me make sure I was looking. Yeah, 7 bench points from the Knicks. The Pacers bench points in the first half, they had 9, 19, 21, 23 bench points in the first half. So 23-7. Like that's what the Pacers did last year. Like the starters would stay on par and the bench would just smash teams in. And that's what it felt like. That it literally felt like last year's team. It felt like that historic offense. Like we've already been really good on offense, pretty historic in the playoffs already. But like I'm talking that bench unit from last year was transitioning to this year, and you're like, oh my, that's trouble for every team involved coming up. You felt really good all the way until about the end of the second. I think it was like 2 minutes left. And then the Pacers let off the gas. And we've seen this. People that, there are people, I've got friends texting me and stuff like that. They're like, what happened? I saw they were leading at 20 points at the end of the half. What's going on? We know, like Pacer fans know, this team has trouble with a couple things. Slow starts, not beating teams they're expected to beat, and letting up off the gas. Those are the 3 Achilles heels, a heel for the Pacers, the 3 problems for the Achilles heel. Just I wanted to text back like, nah, this is normal. Like this seems about right. Pacers getting out to big leads and letting teams back into it. It's the nature of the game. It's the nature of this Pacers team. So was I shocked? No. Was it a bummer? Oh, absolutely. Because you're on the doorstep of the NBA final. You're one good half away from being in the NBA finals. We'd still have to play another game to beat them, but no teams ever come back from 3-0. You were one half away. I was feeling good. I was like, who's going to be the matchup? I was excited to watch tonight's game, being like, all right, Minnesota, because I'm rooting for Minnesota in that Western Conference series. I want home court advantage. Not that it matters, it seems, but I want home court advantage in the finals. So I'm rooting for Minnesota to win that series. I don't want the Thunder. Thunder are really good too. I don't want them. So, yeah, I was on such a high. I was on cloud 9, as probably many of you were. I mean, it was to the point where Pacers like throwing alley oops and Toppin's dunking them, and the crowd's going electric. And actually, it was an interesting point. I've never really thought about this, but there could be times too where you get too excited and you lose focus, and that's what Rick alluded to. And he's spot on. And this is why I love that they call him the basketball savant, because the Pacers were up 20. They had about 2.5 minutes left in the second quarter. There was some weird plays where they turned the ball over, missing layups and missing shots, turning it over. Knicks doing what they needed to do, capitalizing on it. And the Knicks get on a little 7-2 run, I think it was. They end up cutting the lead down to 13 heading into the half. And Reggie Miller said it. That was a mistake by the Pacers. He said it right away. He goes, that was bad. That mojo, that confidence that the Knicks kind of had going into the half. The Pacers were feeling good about themselves, but kind of let them off the gas, and now they're back in it. 13's not a lot. 20's not a lot in today's NBA. We've seen this now, especially the Knicks. 20 points is like the new 10-point lead. So, yeah, you didn't feel good. You really didn't feel good, I don't think, heading into, like, I didn't. I was like, man, that was kind of a waste there. Like, hope that doesn't come back to bite us. And they'd missed a couple free throws too in the half. And you're like, gosh, I hope that doesn't come back to bite us. Well, it does. If they close out the half and they're up by 18 or 19, I think this is a totally different game. Because then you're at the point where if you come out hot, which they did in the third quarter, they came out pretty well in the third. And I thought if they did that and had closed out that half, they'd be up 20-something points, and the Knicks would have shipped it in. They'd have been like, this is done. Like, because I really do and I've seen the interactions on the bench, and I think there's some weird stuff going on in their locker room where, and I think this happens with the Cat team, is that they kind of get down on him, and there's a confidence level with him that kind of starts to evaporate, and people get frustrated. They were arguing on the bench in game 2 when they had the lead. They were like arguing to the point where like Jalen Brunson, you can tell, goes over to Cat and goes, "Shut up, like stop talking." Like it got to that. And that's a different, like people are like, "Oh, they argue all the time." That's a different kind of thing. When you've got a player that they're chirping back and forth. And I think it was Josh Hart and Towns. And Josh Hart's a very intelligent, high energy, always doing the right thing, 100% effort all the time. Towns, not so much. They were kind of chirping back and forth. No, it might have been Anunoby. It's one of the two. It was one of the two that really, you don't really, what do you argue about them with? Like they're going to give you 100% effort. They're going to always do their best. Anunoby and Hart, they make some mistakes, but like that's it. Whereas Towns, you can sometimes question his decision making, his IQ in the game, maybe his intensity at times you can question, and that's kind of been the narrative that follows him. But you can see them get into it, and Jalen basically is like, "Stop talking, like just shut up." To Towns, he didn't say it to, I think it was Hart or Anunoby. He didn't say it to them. He said it to Towns, like, "Stop." Yeah, it seems weird. It seems like, and the reason why I'm bringing that up is I do feel like they're ready to implode. Just give them the button. And the Pacers didn't do that. They should have done that, and they didn't. Foul trouble for the Knicks was the storyline leading into the second half. Maybe that run too. Pacers didn't feel too good about that probably, but they answered pretty well in the third. And about 30 minutes into the game, the Pacers got to feel real good about their chances. And then all of a sudden, Brunson gets into foul trouble. Nesmith rolls his ankle. And once Nesmith rolled his ankle, you could tell the fan base was like, "Oh, shoot." Like, here we are, game 3. Looked like then we were going to close them out. And then game 4 probably would have been a sweep. So we were like, all right, we're going to the finals. But now, man, now Aaron Nesmith's down and it looks serious. He couldn't put any weight on it walking off the floor. Like that looked really bad. I'm like, oh, here we go again. Here's this storyline of Pacers getting to the pinnacle and then lose a player that's crucial to their success. And then we start to unravel. And you could feel the energy kind of shift off of that. And you could feel the dread that could have been like, oh man, we might be without Aaron Nesmith in our first finals since 2000. That sucks. That's a bummer. So you're starting to think about all these things. You don't want to get too far ahead because stuff like this happens. But you were feeling really good about the Pacers' chance. I think it was like a 14 or 15 point lead when Nesmith goes down, maybe even in 13, 12. But you felt good as a double digit lead. The Pacers had some momentum back. They were answering. Brunson was going to get in foul trouble. So you knew you had that in your back pocket. You felt great. And then all of a sudden, Nesmith gets hurt. And then all of a sudden, I keep saying all of a sudden, but it was like next play, the Knicks just start to roll. And you're like, oh, crap. Because once they start to roll without Nesmith, you have Ben Shepherd in. And Ben Shepherd's fine defensively, but he's not Aaron Nesmith. And you just felt it. It switched. Knicks had momentum. They knew the Pacers were vulnerable. They got desperate because, again, like I said, that was a desperate. If that lineup comes in, they miss the first 6 shots they take, Pacers are 3-0 lead with tomorrow being the closeout sweep game. But they didn't. They came in and got some offensive fouls. Benedict Mathurin making some stupid plays, turn the ball over, Toppin turn the ball over. Like, just it started feeling icky. It was like, TJ McConnell going a little too fast. It turned into a brutal game for pretty much, I think it was probably like 18 minutes, 17 minutes to end the game. Like, it just felt like constant, just the Pacers coming unraveled all the way till even the end of the game. I mean, even the end of the only time that it felt somewhat good was there was a point where Miles Turner had a pretty good look for 3 and it rolled in and out. And you're like, well, that was our chance. I think we're going to lose it now. But that was the only positive I ever felt in that stretch. I was like, oh gosh, this is getting awful. Like Towns is hitting threes out of his ears. He hit 1 3 to make it 94-90 that had Pascal and Miles both jumped at him. And honestly, it probably could have been a 4-point play. He hits a buries a 25, 26 footer. And you're just like, oh man. But yeah, they storm back in desperation mode in a lineup. I'm pretty sure Tibbs didn't even know half their names that were out there. He just pointed at hey, that guy, get him. Put him in. He seems like somebody. He's got shoes on, right? Let's go. So I joke, but do I? But yeah, Karl Anthony Towns finally shows up in this game, and in a historic way, a 20-point quarter, just like Aaron Nesmith in game 1, explodes. And that is all she wrote, because they did what they were supposed to do in this game. They closed it out like they knew how they were going to close it out. There was no miraculous comeback. And of course, as a Pacer fan, you're like, all right, 4 points down by 9, or like 9 seconds down by 4. We got this. This is an easy win. But no, it never turned out that way. Pacers just couldn't get anything offensively. I mean, even when the starters came back in, they were so ramped up defensively that the Pacers just had no answer. They weren't ready for that. They weren't ready for that intensity in the fourth quarter. They hadn't seen it all game, especially the starters. They hadn't seen that all game. So then they check back in after the bench imploded, and then they implode too offensively. They score 20 points, which is horrible. And you could probably go back and find maybe a handful of games that the Pacers ever did that in the fourth quarter in the regular season, let alone maybe 2 or 3 games that they did that in the season where they scored 20 points in the fourth, 20 points or less. So yeah, just you feel sick, right? After this game. I mean, I literally turned the TV off and I sat in my chair, and my wife was already in bed, and I'm just sitting there scrolling through Twitter. Like, how? Like, don't do this. Do not give them 2 games after you take 2 games at Madison Square. Like, don't do that. That's all you're thinking. You're like, and then you're going, well, if Aaron Nesmith doesn't play, then they're going to even this series. So you don't feel good, right? And I still feel like, come on, that was brutal. And I didn't record right after, just because, one, it was late, and by the time I scrolled through Twitter and got all my feelings in, it was 11:30, almost midnight. So yeah, I did not feel good about that, but those were the big moments that really changed it. TJ McConnell, I thought, played really well and had moments of changing the game, but then in the second half, it was a tale of 2 halves. Guys that were good in the first weren't so good in the second, and the offense was awful. Bench was great. You got probably the best bench game that we've gotten all playoffs, and squandered the lead, and now staring down the barrel of a 2-2 series tie if the Knicks come in and have that same kind of intensity and play pretty good in game 4 and can beat the Pacers. So that would be, I mean, what an opportunity that would be to fail. I'm not saying it would be over, because I'm not convinced that I joked about this with my friends. You might get a laugh out of this one. It's a good thing we have road court advantage. I had to make sure I said that right. Road court advantage. We play 2 more games on the road, we'll have, if we get to a game 7, we will play on the road, so we automatically win, because only the road teams win in this series, I guess. Which would be crazy, wouldn't it? Like, if it goes Pacers, Knicks, Pacers, Knicks, Pacers, like, that would be absolutely nuts. I mean, who's to say I wouldn't be for that? Like, that would be nerve-wracking. My nerves couldn't handle that in game 7, but at this rate, it's what it looks like it's going to. Because you think about it, you're like, okay, well, if the Knicks, I could see the Knicks winning game 4, especially if Aaron Nesmith's not healthy. They could win game 4, but then the Pacers would be like, well, you can't beat us in 3, or like, we can't make this, the Knicks can't go back with they can't get game 5 and take a 3-2 lead. So we're going to take it. So they go into Madison Square Garden fired up. They don't lose 3 in a row. Pacers win it. Game 5. They go back to Gainbridge going, all right, let's close this out. Knicks win it, because they're like, no, we're not going home. And then game 7, anything can happen. And we saw what happened in game 7 last year. So against this team, it could happen. I could see it. I don't want it to happen, but I could see it. I don't want it to happen. I want game 4 to go to the Pacers, and convincingly, and then you got games to play with. I could, what a time it would be for 2 years in a row to go into the Garden, That's why I want game 4 so badly, is that I really do think if the Pacers win game 4, they could definitely end it in game 5. And what a moment it would be to crush the New York Knicks and knock them out of the playoffs in front of the Madison Square Garden crowd. Because there's some pressure there. Like, they can't deny it. They're 3-5 at home in these playoffs at Madison Square Garden, which is supposed to be one of the toughest places to play on the road in tough environment. And you can tell there's some nerves there. Like, there's some pressure, and I think it gets to them sometimes when they play in the Garden, because those fans, man, they deserve a lot. They deserve a championship, but we don't want to give it to them. So there's a lot of pressure there. It's a lot of fun, this series. Some close games, and we thought it would be a 6-game series. I picked the Pacers in 6. I said the Pacers could win this in 5. I could see that. Right now, it's holding up pretty well. If they get game 4, I'm feeling really good about what I said. If they lose game 4, I'm not feeling good about what I just said, because then I'm like, oh, Knicks could probably win this series, and bad things are happening. But yeah, I don't feel 100% confident in anything anymore with this team. I felt pretty darn confident going into game 3, and we have never won on Pacers Racers Day. We are 0-4 in the history of Pacers and Racers. So can we not play ever again on the day that Indy 500 is? And it's funny because the Pacers don't go out to, it's not like the Pacers team goes out and hangs out at the 500 and tries to play the game. They're sitting at home, but maybe that's it. Maybe they're like missing out on the I want to be out there. And they're so wrapped up in the 500 that they forget they have a game that night. I don't know. It happened against the Heat too. The last time we played the Heat and Pacers Racers, I think the Pacers were up 2-1 they were up. Were they up 2-1? I feel like we were up 2-1. We were either up 2-1 or we were tied 1-1. I think it was 2-1, because I think we're like, all right, game 4, Pacers Racers. Pacers could really put the pressure on, and then they squander it and end up losing in 7 games. I think that's what happened. Can't remember exactly, but I felt like that was right. The second half disaster I want to talk about in a little bit more depth. You see the importance of Aaron Nesmith in times like this. I think if you had any questions about what the Pacers do to consolidate the roster, I think you no longer look at them getting rid of Aaron Nesmith or Andrew Nembhard. They're just so essential to what this team is doing. I think you look elsewhere. There's nobody behind him in the rotation making an impact. Reggie Miller, I quote, said, Benedict Mathurin has been really bad in this series, end quote. And he's not been good, which has been a bummer. And it is his first postseason. I get that, but you felt like just his killer instinct and dog-like mentality. It just doesn't. And he wrote a nice article in the Player Tribune, if you have time to read that, where he talks about it. I mean, he's very upfront about it, where, he's still learning and growing, and he's going to take these opportunities to be better. And and we as Pacer fans will see him at his best. It's not here this year, I don't think. In the second half, the Pacers were 14 of 38 from the field. For a team that shoots over 50% in the playoffs, that's crazy that they're shooting that high, but still, water finds its level. We don't shoot this poorly again, I don't believe. Maybe a game, later on, but I don't think it'll be back-to-back nights ever with this team. I don't think so. 2 of 12 from 3, that's where it really crushed you in the second half. They didn't hit any threes. They didn't put any pressure on the Knicks perimeter defense at all. So then you're just trying to operate in this post-up half-court game, and they're not hitting shots. They're not getting points in transition. They're not causing turnovers by the Knicks, or scoring off the turnovers by the Knicks at least. It just ended poorly. And then they turned the ball over 8 times in a half. That doesn't happen. Like, the Pacers just don't do that. They got sloppy, turned the ball over 8 times, and they got beat on the boards. Now, a lot of that probably is to do with the fact that the Pacers shot 36%. Because honestly, the Pacers, they won the battle, the rebound battle. It's funny. I think I read a tweet where it said the team that won the rebound battle last year won the game. So every game that the team won the rebound battle, they won the game. This year, every game that the team has lost the rebound battle, they've won the game. So I don't know. It's crazy. But yeah, they got out rebound, but I think that was more in the fact that the Pacers just missed more shots. Pacers in this game were 34 of 77, shooting 44% from the field. Pretty low for them. This is where it's really bad. 5 of 25 from the 3-point line. at home, you shot 20%. You make 4 of those, three of them. You make 3 of them, you win the game. So you go 8 of 25, you win the game, which is awful, but still you win the game. Very frustrating. They're not the best 3-point shooting team, but they're not that bad. They're like a 40% 3-point shooting team in the playoffs. The Pacers defense was a mess too when the bench unit came in and the Knicks got desperate. The Knicks in the second half, shot 50% from the field. They were Pacer efficient in the second half. 18 for 36, 6 for 13 from the 3-point line. That's a 46% clip. That's not acceptable. 19 to 20 from the line. They didn't miss any free throws. And they shot 5 more free throws in the second half than the Pacers. All stats that lean to, yeah, the Pacers should have gotten beat. Epic collapse, but still. What does this mean? Okay, so let's reset, right? Let's end this episode on a more positive wavelength note. So what does this mean? This Pacers loss, this epic loss, collapse, whatever you want to say. Come back. Great job, Knicks. Kudos to you. You've extended the series now to game 5 at least. I think it probably a game 6, maybe at this point. So what does this mean for the Pacers? And I took this in multiple different ways. Like I was like, you know what? Let's go positive, because I think we have no reason to doubt this team, this Pacers team, because, and people will say, well, at least in game 3 of the Bucks and the Cavs, those were blowouts. One at Milwaukee, one at home against the Cavs. Whereas this game 3, they were blowing them out and gave up the lead and lost. But that's not how this team thinks. And I think people will try to push that narrative on them that, oh man, Pacers are going to be really down in the dumps after this game 3 loss. Does it suck? Absolutely. Has this team ever shown that? No, not at all. They don't, it's game to game. These playoffs have shown that. And I don't know why the national media will sometimes say that when you can look at a series and go, no, it's pretty much been game to game in these NBA playoffs for every series. I mean, look at Minnesota, right? Look at the Thunder. Look at Denver. Look at whoever you want to look at. Every game seems to be different. And these players have to have the reset because it does you no good. You can't change the game that happened in game 3. But you know what you can do? Make those adjustments and come after them in game 4. Respond. This team, except for, and I would even say in the Boston series last year, they did swing back. They just didn't have enough punches. Every time that this Pacer team has been smacked at, in this playoffs especially, they've swung back even harder. And that's what I expect from this Pacer team. I think you see the most intense Pacer team we've seen all season. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if that means still a low-scoring game, because this was the lowest scoring game, I think, for the Knicks for the Pacers in the whole postseason. This was their lowest point total at 100, which is still crazy to think, because a lot of lowest outputs, overall scores for teams are usually below 100 if you look at it. But the Pacers are just so good offensively that they still at least got to 100, even though they sucked in the second half. I think if you're a Pacer fan, you got to take a lot of silver lining with the way that just this team responds. This team has always responded. And until they don't, we have no reason to doubt them. So I'm expecting a good response. Does that mean they win game 4? I don't know. Because this game, these teams are so different, but similar in a way, that it could go either way. But I feel confident in the fact that the Pacers will make the adjustments needed to stop that from happening against that weird bench unit that was thrown out there, to stop Karl Anthony Towns from having a 20-point quarter. And Towns is probably not going to have many 20-point quarters. Here are some things that you should consider when thinking about game 4. Teams with a 2-1 lead in a best-of-7 series have advanced 478 times out of 597. Teams with a 3-1 lead in a that was 80%. So a team that leads 2-1 in a best-of-7 series, they advance 80% of the time. So that's still really good because that's where the Pacers are at currently, 2-1 lead. Chances are 80% of the time you advance in those situations. Teams with a 3-1 lead in a best of 7 series have advanced 283 times out of 296 chances. That's 95.6%. If the Pacers win game 4, they will be in a 3-1 lead, and 95% of the time those teams go on to win that 7-game series because the team would have to go on to win 3 games in a row. A team that had home court advantage, meaning the first 2 games were at home in the best of 7 series, have never won a best of 7 series when losing their first 2 games at home. The Knicks lost their first 2 games at home. A team has never done that and won a series. So we still have that going for us. Here is the thing. History can and always happens. The Knicks talk about being history. They want to be history, but every team has always said they want to be history, and it has not panned out very well for teams that have said that because it's very difficult to do, right? So think about that. Also think about the fact that, yes, things happen. The Knicks do have 2 players that I believe could put them in a history book of coming back and winning this series. Even if it got to 3-1, I could still see where the Pacers need to go out and throw out the knockout punch because 3-1 doesn't mean it's over. And the Knicks have 2 guys that could make it a series again and win a series and become historic because Towns and Brunson can score 35 each. You've seen it happen. It can happen. Will I expect it to happen? No, I don't. But it could. The Pacers have a must-win game at home in Game 4. However, if they do lose, remember how difficult it is to win 3 straight games, meaning Game 5 would be a 3rd straight win for the Knicks. Don't care if it's at home because the Pacers are 6-1 at home or on the road, and so are the Knicks. Knicks are 6-1 on the road. That's amazing. The fact that both of them are 6-1 in these playoffs when they are away from home. The Pacers are 4-2 at home in the postseason, only losing to the Cavs and Knicks in this Game 3 and the Game 3 against the Cavs. The Knicks are 3-5 at home in this postseason. They've lost to Detroit. They've lost to Boston. And twice to the Pacers. Or no, twice to the Pacers. I think their one loss came against the Pistons at home. I don't think they lost to the Celtics at home, right? Can't remember. The Pacers had their worst offensive game in the postseason in the second half, shot themselves out of it, had chances in the last few minutes to lead and beat the Knicks. They only lost by 6, and they had easily the worst offensive performance they've had in a game. There's some silver lining. Because if they're somewhat average, they probably win that game. The Pacers probably don't have to deal with a Deuce McBride game like that again, which is saying a lot because he didn't really, like, he had a good impact on the game. He had an impact. But the fact that he was instrumental in the game changed the trajectory of this, and he scored 9 points. He probably doesn't score 9 or 10 points, except maybe once more in this series if it goes 6 or 7. So they're not going to get the same bench production probably. Cat likely doesn't have another 20-point corner in him. And Brunson has struggled at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. So if you look at Gainbridge Fieldhouse stats for Jalen Brunson over the last couple of years, so let's go to 2024, 2025 Gainbridge Fieldhouse. And this is during the regular season. He averaged 20.5 points per game, shot 53%, but was only 33% from the 3-point line. And really only averaged 6 free throws attempted per game at Gainbridge this season in the regular season. But again, he only averaged 20 points per game at Gainbridge. He struggles to score at Gainbridge way more than he struggles. I mean, he's really good at Madison Square Garden, but he has historically struggled at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. In 2023-2024 postseason at Gainbridge, they played 3 games. They lost those 3 games. He scored 25 points per game in those matchups. He shot 39.1% from the field in games at Gainbridge Fieldhouse in the 2023-2024 postseason, so last year. And then if you look back at last regular season, he played a game and only scored 28 points. So Brunson has always struggled at Gainbridge. Could he go for 35? Yeah, I mean, he's that kind of player, but history would say no. He will not have a huge performance. So you can take that for what it is. Probably just jinxed and he's going to score 40 tomorrow. But whatever. The Knicks have constantly been in foul trouble, right? Games 2 and 3 were marred by just how much foul trouble the Knicks can be in because Brunson and Towns are going to be in foul trouble because they can't defend these Pacers. Tibbs is going to Tibbs. I still think that they will try that where they play 9 guys again, but I don't think it'll go as well this time. And I think he starts to revert back to maybe I shouldn't play them. Let's go back to that 7-man rotation. I feel more comfortable there. Pacers depth is still an issue, no matter how much we want to talk about like how the Knicks came back in this. At the end of the day, if this game or if this series goes deeper and deeper, the deeper it goes, the more of an advantage the Pacers have because of their depth. And then what can talking about the depth, the Pacers bench has averaged 33.5 points per game, the Knicks 14.5 points per game. And I don't think Shamet and Wright don't really add anything offensively, so except defensive bodies. They're not really going to score a lot. So even if they score, they're not even going to come close to what the Pacers bench can usually produce. Advantage Pacers. So as long as the starters stay on average with the starters for the Knicks, the Pacers should be fine. What else can the Knicks adjust? I think they've done it all. I really do. Like, I'm trying to think of like what they do to adjust, but they win game 3, so there's not going to be that many adjustments. I think there will be some. But like, what else do they do? They can't ramp up. Like, it's not like they can go, let's ramp up the defensive pressure. Can't do that if Towns and Brunson are out there. Can't ramp up that pressure. I guess you could say Mikal Bridges, let's ramp that up and just really keep Tyrese off the ball. Maybe that's the one adjustment. But other than that, besides playing that depth unit where you play 9 guys, there's not much else that I don't think that Tibbs can really do. Pacers can make adjustments. How do you guard Towns better, right? How do you continue to keep those role players at bay? I think they defended OG and Mikal pretty well. Mikal had a pretty good game in this one. I think you could tighten up the defense there. Another thing that I think the Pacers can start to consider, if Aaron Nesmith is healthy, or even if he's not healthy, like maybe that's an interesting wrinkle that we're throwing in there. If he's not healthy, this is something they would probably consider. But also, if he is healthy, the Pacers haven't tried really what Boston and Detroit did, where they threw a smaller body at Karl Anthony Towns. And I'm talking like a 3 or even a 4. Why not try Pascal Siakam on Karl Anthony Towns? Because he guarded Giannis, and Giannis is much better at getting to the rim than Towns is. So why not just try it? Mitchell Robinson and I think Miles would do fine on Mitchell Robinson. So why not throw Pascal at Towns? If you're not going to throw Pascal at Towns, throw Aaron Nesmith at him. And if Aaron Nesmith's not healthy, if Benedict Mathurin starts, throw him at him. Like, just try something different for a little bit and see if it works. Because I do believe that if Towns has a smaller guard on him, the guard will have a better chance at least getting to his 3-point shot that he likes to get to, because he gets up a shot real quick and the bigs are just not quick enough to get out to him when he tries to do that, because they're trying to play off him a little bit to try to eliminate him from getting to the rim on the dribble. So they do play off him a little bit, and Towns got such a quick release that he gets it off quick. But if you have a guard, they're not worried about him beating you side to side. But if he does beat you side to side, he's going to take you down. But I would live with Karl Anthony Towns trying to beat me on the dribble all the time. I would live with it. See what happens. See if he can finish around the rim as much. Throw some help. Kind of Giannis him, right? Throw a body at him. Let the guard face guard him. Or Pascal face guard him, deny. And then when he gets it, make him beat him. Make him beat you off the dribble and then form that T. See what happens. Throw something different at Towns if he starts going. Now, that being said, he really hasn't gotten going. But when he has, why not change it up? Throw something weird at him. Because there might be another time, obviously, there will be another time where he starts to hit some shots. Throw a couple possessions, throw Neesmith at him. See what happens. So many times you see it where he gets going and Miles is still guarding him. You're like, what are you doing? Like, that's obviously not working. So I don't know. That's one adjustment, I guess. But Miles, I will say Miles and Pascal and them have done a pretty good job defending him because he only had 4 points heading into the fourth quarter. So the defensive assignments was working. Whatever they were doing in game 3 was working until it wasn't working. And then once he started to get going, why weren't we double teaming him? He was out there with everybody but Brunson at points. There was even times where he was out there and Anunoby and Brunson were on the bench, or Bridges and Anunoby were on the bench with Brunson. If he's out there and Deuce, like, fine, let Deuce McBride shoot him because he's not going to. Karl Anthony Towns is one of those people that can become a flamethrower. Bridges will live with it if he becomes one because role players tend to miss or tend to make more mistakes. Make Karl Anthony Towns pass the ball. There's so many times where it was like double team him, take him completely out of the play. So I don't know. There were some adjustments I think that you can try if he starts it going again. One last thing I want to say before we wrap this up. I know this is a long episode, and I figured it would be just because there's a lot to talk about because there's so much on the line right now with Game 4. And we'll preview Game 4 in another episode coming up. Aaron Nesmith's health is obviously a big concern. I really do feel like if Aaron Nesmith has to miss time, the Knicks probably are favored in this series. Aaron Nesmith has been so important to what we do as a team. And can the Pacers still win a series? Yeah, without Aaron, but it's going to be a lot more difficult just because there's not been anything behind him that's helped. Like you can't plug Mathurin in there and expect it to be okay. I don't think you can plug Ben Shepherd in there and expect it to be okay because that puts an onus back on Mathurin wherever he is. And Mathurin's just not been as good. We need a good Mathurin. We really, really do. It could be so vital to what happens in the next couple of games if he shows up, but I'm not sure he's going to get that chance. But we'll see. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for listening. If you made it this far, this has been a good episode. It's been very therapeutic. I know it's been a little bit longer, but I appreciate it if you made it this far in the episode. Leave me comments below. What do you think the Pacers do in Game 4 to adjust to what the Knicks did? What adjustments are needed? You know, how much are on the level of concern are you on with Aaron Nesmith? Can we win without Aaron Nesmith? What are your predictions for the rest of the series? Pacers in 6, Knicks in 6, Pacers in 5, Knicks in 5, Knicks in 5. Knicks can't 5. No, sorry, Knicks can't win in 5. If Knicks win in 5, we're in trouble. But yeah, Knicks in 6, Pacers in 6, Knicks in 7, Pacers in 7. What do you think? Pacers in 5. Let me know your predictions. Be interested to hear. We are on socials at the Pacers Fever Show. You can find us on all socials over there. We are on YouTube as well. Like I said earlier in the episode, subscribe, like, comment, helps people find us. Also rate and give us 5 stars over on Spotify and Apple because you can rate the podcast there. We really appreciate it so far. Thanks for listening. We are going to be back for another episode previewing Game 4. It won't be that long of an episode, I don't believe, but still some things to discuss in that preview. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time on the Pacer Fever Show. And we're hoping that the Pacers can do what they need to do in Game 4 on Tuesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern time on TNT.